Hey there, it's Robin, and you're listening to the Healthy Habits for Midlife Mamas. This podcast is all about you, your health, your wellness, and making those 1% shifts that can transform your life one step at a time. Here, we're going to explore simple, holistic strategies to help you thrive and not just survive in this beautiful midlife chapter. Whole foods and movement to mindset shifts and spiritual grounding, I'm going to guide you through all of it so that you can feel your best inside and out. If you are ready to reclaim your energy and make wellness a priority, you're in the right place. And if you're loving what you hear, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps me and you to reach more women just like us. Now, let's dive in and see what we can find. Hey, y'all, welcome back. In today's episode, we have the incredible Steph Gass joining us. Steph's a powerhouse in helping women find clarity in their purpose and aligning that purpose with a business or ministry. If you've ever felt stuck or unsure about your calling, this episode is definitely for you. We're going to dive into how to use a podcast, if that's something you're interested in, as a tool to generate leads. But more importantly, Steph emphasizes that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It is about getting curious, exploring your passions, and finding what works for you, just like in health and wellness, right? She also shares her self-care and non-negotiables, which include prayer, keeping work and personal life separate, and being fully present with her family. So if this sounds interesting, grab a cozy spot and get ready to be inspired to find your clarity on your own journey. So let's jump in. Hey, y'all, welcome back. I am super excited to introduce you to Stefanie. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me on, Robin.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. First of all, for those of you who don't know, Stefanie has, and maybe she doesn't even know this, but she's been really instrumental in helping me to break down things in a way that feels good, authentic, and aligned with who I want to serve and where I want to be during this new phase of my life. And I know a lot of my listeners are these empty nest, midlife mamas who are, in transition. And so one of the things that you're so good at that I loved that really drew me into you was the clarity piece. So first of all, if you want to just introduce yourself just a tad bit and just kind of say how you've gotten here, and then I want to definitely dive into the clarity piece.
Absolutely. So like Robin mentioned, I'm Stefanie. I'm a boy mom. I've got two boys, 10 and 7, almost 8. Married. I live in New Mexico where we put chili on everything we eat. That's a problem. I've been an online entrepreneur now for 15 years, and it's been a crazy ride of really high highs and failures and lows, ultimately to get to this place where I finally feel so aligned with the business that God has for me and had for me all along. And what I do today is I help women really get clear on what they're called to do, whether in a business sense or a ministry sense, and then use a podcast to generate the leads for that said business or ministry and then monetize it, whether it be through coaching or an online course or an offer of some kind. And it's so fun. Like Robin mentioned, I have my own podcast now, which is become the way that we generate income for my company. I have a team, which is crazy to think about. All those years.
So, and I want to stop for one second because Stefanie is not a social media person. So if you're someone that's like, this is never going to be for me because I don't like social media. Stefanie will definitely, say a lot about that, but she's not a social media person. So you don't have to be somebody who spends all day, every day on social media in order to, figure out what your purpose actually is, right? And to fulfill that purpose by getting some clarity. You can do it in a lot of different ways. And that's what, one of the things that you really brought to my attention that I loved. Is that there's not one way for everybody.
Exactly. And I think what's super cool about the business model I run today is it is actually completely independent of social media. So I was able to grow my business into a really successful place after completely getting off of Instagram personally. I was posting all the time. I was there 4 to 5 hours a day trying to grow a business. And really what it was doing was it was just capitalizing on all of my time that was precious. And so I felt led to let go of Instagram and completely get off of it. I did that for 2 years and it was so refreshing and so wonderful. And the coolest thing was that my business still grew. And I think back to the original piece that Robin, you brought up was how do we get clarity on, first of all, what we're meant to do, and then the second component of how we're meant to do it. And that was kind of the journey that I went on.
Yeah. And so for these midlife moms, whether they've worked their whole life or whether they haven't worked in 20 plus years, the conversation that comes up a lot is, what am I going to be again when I grow up? And it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not, and it is about, we're not the same person that we were prior to having kids. And that's the first thing that we all have to kind of come to terms with and recognize, is that you can't go back to something that, because it might not fit you. It might, but it may not serve you anymore. And I also feel like when you're coming into this midlife, chapter, you have such life that's been lived. You have such wisdom and experience, and momming gives you these credentials that you can't get from a business. And so if you're somebody out there thinking, what's next for me? I think diving into Stefanie's clarity, she's got a little program that she does that's about clarity, and just see what comes up. I think I always say, get curious, because part of health and wellness is career, right? Whether it's a corporate career, whether it's a side hustle, whether you're giving back to a charity, whatever that looks like for you. It doesn't have to be a 9-to-5 job, but when you're trying to get into something to fulfill your purpose, right? To do something that God has called you to do, you've got to get clear with yourself. And I think that's what your clarity coaching course thing did for me, was open my eyes to seeing, okay, these are the gifts that I've had. This is where I kind of have come along and brought all these new things with my momming. And now here I am 50 and have a different, completely different voice and such. So
yeah, I would add to that.
Yeah.
Put some tactical to it for those of you listening going, well, that sounds really good, but I don't actually understand the how of that. Sure. You can come take my course. I have a free workshop too, a free clarity workshop that Robin can link, but it's looking at coming outside of all the things that you do. Cause sometimes we get so fixated on well, I have a job, I have a career, and then I do this and or I've done this. We have to come out of that and holistically take this almost, 10,000 foot view down on, I think the biggest clues are, what have we been through that were really hard? I think that is some of the most important information to bring into a brand. And whether you want to make money with it, whether it's a new passion project, whether it's a new hobby that you're looking for, or whether it's a full-fledged business, look at that. There is a reason you walked through it and you're on the other side of it. So whether that's a trauma that you went through, or a trial, or a breakdown, that is important. The other piece you want to look at, I think that's two other components that are really important. One is your spiritual giftings. So this would be are you really great at speaking, or are you really great at administration? And there's lots of free spiritual gift tests that you guys can take. That's an important component. And then the last one is your vocational giftings. So this is these are the things that you're naturally great at that you think everybody else just would know how to do, like organizing, or for me, it's speaking and leadership in business. And I'm what do you mean people struggle with sales? I don't understand that, right? Because it's natural for me. So you take those three pieces and you put them together. And what we're actually looking for in my course, and Robin can attest to this, we're looking for the common denominator. What is the root, right? And it's often something sticky and tangible that you can actually touch. So some examples that I see some of my students come out with is oh, okay, I'm going to help people with communication coaching for newlyweds, because I went through a struggle in my marriage where we didn't communicate. I'm really great at teaching. And I also had a therapist background. It's oh my gosh, yes, you're right there. Right. Or somebody might say, oh, well, I'm actually going to build this new business around decluttering your closet for career women because blah, 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 blah. So you're really looking for those sticky things that you can put your fingers to. If you're coming up with stuff they're emotional words, or it's an elusive outcome, you've got more digging to do till it's something you want to put it through the sell test. If I ever wanted to sell something related to this brand, is this something I could sell? And it's usually something that you can touch, you can feel. It's also communicated at a 5th grade or below level. So this is where I always tell my students, the more boring and basic you can communicate what you do, the more sales you will make. And so those are just some fun free tips to help you guys get a little closer to clarity.
I love that. And, and what I love really listening to you say that is that it applies to everything in your life. And I always go back, you said holistic, you said zooming out, because that is the very same thing that has to be done when we are changing and elevating our wellness. It's not just the food on your plate. It literally, we call that secondary food. Everything off your plate that feeds your soul is your primary food. And we haven't been taught that in that language, but once we can start to understand what the pieces and parts are, we can look at every one of those holistically and say, what can I do in each area? And I always talk about the 1% shifts, and everybody knows me for that, because you cannot overhaul a segment overnight. It is a process. It's a literal, journey, and there's no end to it. So it is about undoing a lot of reframing a lot of the old patterns that you may have had at one time in your life because you were conditioned to that or told that was what you should do or be. And I love when you said the thing about doing. We are moms, I feel like, are doing beings, right? But we forget to just be. And we really need to start kind of crafting that. What am I like when I just am, right? When you started, this business, and again, all businesses have those waves, ups and downs. A lot of times people's health take the back seat. So I'm curious with you, how do you balance and pour into those in a balanced way so that you have good health while you're still growing, while you're still momming, while you're still a wife, and all of the things?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think depending on where you are, making health a priority is going to look really different, right? When I had littles and my kids were not in full-time school yet, I went to a gym that had the daycare so that I did an hour of work and then I did an hour of working out. And that was one hack that I did to really help with my health. And then as I went through a new season and my kids were both in full-time school, we live in the mountains. And so we had to make a shift where we invested in a home gym in one of our garages, because now I can go work from my Peloton. I can do weight training out in the gym. And what I've done is I've really cultivated a habit of my wellness is now a habit, right? And this has taken years and years and years. And I'm sure Robin talks a lot about the undoing, right? Where we fixate on what's the new diet or what's the new number on the scale that we're going for. And now my habit is just health. Like, I don't really care what the outcome of it is, because when I'm making the right choices, health will follow. And
Yes.
for me, treating my body like a temple biblically is the most important thing. And so tangibly and tactically, what that looks like waking up, getting in scripture in the morning. It looks like on Sundays and Wednesdays, I'm usually prepping my proteins for the week. I'm usually doing a delivery grocery order so that I don't run out of food and run out of those easy, quick things that I want to eat during my workday. The other tangible things are going on mountain bike rides with my family, like thinking about how can I make health a habit and how can I also make health really fun? At least the pieces that you can. Like, is it fun to meal prep my proteins every Sunday? Like, yes and no. I've actually created this fun hack that I do where if I'm going to do something I don't love, like laundry, or I don't hate meal prep, honestly, but let's say that I didn't love it. I use those times to do a guilty pleasure. So this might look like watching YouTube videos that I want to watch, or watching a show, or listening to a podcast. So if you guys can partner a habit that you're trying to create, something that's not desirable for you with something desirable, your brain starts to communicate like, oh, when I work out, I get to watch my show. Or when I do my meal prepping, I get to listen to my favorite podcast. That's really been a fun thing for me, to have that positive confirmation as I show up and work out and eat healthy and do those tangible, tactical things. And the last thing I'll mention here is, if you try to go all or none, I always failed. And back to your 1%, right, Robin? Like, every year, basically, as I locked in a new habit, then I would add the next one. I stopped killing myself over trying to be so all or none all the time. And I just decided, what is the one habit I'm trying to become excellent in right now? As soon as I felt that that was on autopilot in my life, which usually took 6 to 12 months, I then asked myself, what's the next health habit that I would like to incorporate? I gave myself time and space to evolve into a truly healthy person. And it's been, 5 years of that process. So also taking it slow I think has created a lot more success.
Yeah. I would say love, 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 love all of that, because first of all, the habit thing, it is about taking something unfamiliar. I call it habit stacking. So you're stacking something with something else, so that you're not necessarily adding, I don't have the time, because you're already doing something. So now you're just stacking something on top that maybe isn't as familiar, but again, it gets paired up with something. And then your brain takes it like, oh, these two things match up. So that's amazing and spot on, and good for you that you were able to figure that out. Because again, is meal prepping super fun for anyone? I mean, maybe some people, I mean, that's their joy. I don't mind it. It's not something that I'm like, but at the same time, I also use it as a time to be present. So when things are hard for me, not hard, or things are challenging or not something that's my favorite, I actually flip my script and I say, okay, what can I do in this present moment? What could I be thinking about? What could I be, working on in my mindset as I'm doing this particular task?
Yeah.
And what that has done for me is shown me how to become absolutely present in a situation. And also the laundry thing comes up, but it's also looking at the clothing thinking, wow, my kids are giant, right? My kids are adults. I mean, they're flying the nest. I don't have to do their laundry. Look at that task a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. What's the other thing? You said taking time. And I think, again, this is such an undoing that we have to do, because for so long we've been taught it's all or nothing. We've been taught you're on a diet, you're off a diet. You are restricting, you're not restricting. You are running 20 miles, you're running nothing, and it's like, I don't know who came up with that, but that's kind of silly if you think about it.
Yeah.
And so by releasing that, letting it go, really opens up a lot of opportunity and space for you to bring your nervous system down and say, okay, what can I do right now? What feels good to me? And when you ask somebody, like for you, what is something that you do in your wellness bubble, I call it, that feels good to you? Like when you wake up, you feel, I already know what you're going to say, but you feel like, I can't wait to do that.
Yeah. When I wake up, I can't wait to get into my scriptures.
I knew it.
Right? Let me be honest. I actually can't wait to get my coffee first.
Okay.
And then I go sit in my prayer corner. I have this couch that looks out over the beautiful sunrise every day. And it's like, I crave it. Like my spirit craves that peacefulness that comes in and allows me to focus on what I can give to God, and then allows me to let go of any stress or anxiety that I might be carrying around for that day. It's just really important. When I don't do it, I feel a very distinct difference in the way I operate.
Right.
I'm way more on edge or stressed, or like those little things come in, like the comparison or the self-sabotage, whatever, like limiting belief thoughts might come in, versus when you start with a sound mind each day, it completely transforms how successful you are at thinking through problems, at leading people in your home or your work or wherever you show up. So that's the thing I look forward to most.
I love that. My community knows I'm always talking about the AM routine, and it doesn't have to be 25 minutes long. It doesn't have to be an hour. It is whatever you have to give. But what I will say, and I think you've said it without saying, is like, you're going to wake up 15 minutes earlier to make sure that that gets done, because you know how you feel the rest of the day. And so when people can relate a feeling to a behavior, you're more apt to continue that behavior, because you're going to get that feeling. And so for you, like your corner, your couch, it's my purple yoga mat. I have it set up in my office, and it's like, I can go there, not even to do yoga. I just sit down and I do my quiet time there. But my body knows when I hit that purple mat, I can release. And so I love when people allow themselves and give themselves enough permission to continue with something over and over to get to that feeling. And then when they call me up and they're like, oh, I know what you're talking about now. Like, I got it. And that, to me, that's why I'm put on this earth, is to help people just find those aha moments, because they're what make us whole and human. So I love it. And one of the other things, we always talk about self-care, not just being like getting your hair done and going for the massage. What are some practices, again, because you are a very busy mom, wife, and business person, how do you squeeze all of that in?
Yeah. I think self-care looks different for everybody. But for me, it's kind of a combination of typical self-care. Like I do actually get a massage every month. And I think that's really important for me to be able to reset the stress that I carry in my shoulders. I sit a lot, through my work. And so that's actually a very important health practice for me, is getting that massage. But also some other self-care things I do are I don't actually work on the weekends. I allow myself that space to fully rest. Another self-care thing that I do is either hike or mountain bike with my family. And so really it's like, if you guys look at what are the things I want to do, but feel too busy to do, those are often the self-care things, or I want to do, but don't want to invest to do. Those are two really great questions you can ask yourself that will show you what are you actually desiring from a self-care perspective. And for me, so long I couldn't afford a massage. So I would ask for massages for my birthday, for Mother's Day, for Christmas. And I'd go once a quarter with all my gift cards. And I did that for years because I knew how important those were for me to feel really good, until the point in which we could afford them. That was such a cool hack. Like there's a way for you to often find opportunity for self-care, even if maybe it's not financially feasible for you, or looking for, okay, I want to travel. It's a self-care thing I want, but I can't afford that. Cool. Well, can you camp? Can you go just have a day getaway somewhere that's driving distance? So looking for that. And for me, it's been this evolution of not making excuses that I don't have time or money to do these things, because what they do is they reset my heart posture. They help me to feel full and healthy. And then I give more. I can serve at a higher capacity. I'm also a lot happier when I'm not all kinked up with stress. So those are some things: the massages, the mountain bikes, the hikes. Not working on the weekends is a self-care thing. The morning time I feel is a self-care thing for me, taking that time for myself. And also carving out time to hang out with some friends, I think is a self-care thing. It's something that we often put to the back burner.
That is actually, part of your wellness is relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's relationship with your husband, it's relationship with your children, but just as equally as important, it is a relationship with your girlfriends.
Yeah, exactly. Those are some of the ones that come to mind.
What you just said that I think can resonate with a lot of listeners is the time and the money piece.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, again, it's just through past conditioning, like to have movement, I must join something. And if that feels good to you and that really is something that you crave, you can, see how you're spending your money in other areas and adjust that if that is going to be a good fit for you. For me, I don't need to be at a place in order to move my body. And in fact, I do better when I'm not, because I'm usually out in nature. I'm usually, doing yoga from home. Whatever it might be, I'm walking with friends. I'm going, into things, looking at movement in a different way. And so I just want to remind people, there's a way by shifting things around most of the time, or it's just about changing the way you look at what it is that you're doing. So self-care could be massage, absolutely 100%, but it also could just be sitting in the morning and having quiet time.
Totally.
So it goes back to, what do you need as a bio-individual, from a bio-individual lens, in order to show up as your best self? So I think everybody has a wellness story. Everybody has those ups and downs of what they've come through in life. And those, at the time when you're going through them, a lot of times it doesn't make sense, or it's hard, or you're like, I can't even, how is this going to work for me in the future? But I do think, like you said, all of that, those pieces and parts and stories that you have lived through have a purpose and a place to help you grow. And so reframing the way that you look at those pieces that might not have felt good, or that might have caused something, out of your control because you were too little or whatnot, but using that for the good of other people, I think is the best scenario that can come out of something that was a challenge at the time. We always talk about leaving with these 1% shifts that we can try on and get curious about. And I think during this conversation today, I would really love for you guys just to take away the fact that we, as women, as moms who have been momming really hard for a long time, have to give ourselves grace and permission to kind of delayer and let down the walls, so our authentic self can actually show up and we can see and start to nurture that person in there that may have put themselves on the side, because that happens sometimes. Again, I do believe it's because we were taught when you mom, right? You become second, you become third, you become, fourth. And it's not always like the greatest thing, but there's a way to get back from that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, okay. So before we leave, I think we've kind of covered it, but I always ask my guests for one or two non-negotiables that you live by most days, because you're going to show up in your best version. And it doesn't have to be necessarily, some people use like a weighted blanket. That's a non-negotiable when they sleep. So it could be all over the place.
Yeah. So 3 non-negotiables for me on a daily basis. One would be prayer. The second non-negotiable for me would be turning off work completely when I'm done working. Not integrating my personal life in my work. I think that's really, really important. And then the third one would be being super present with each family member individually for at least 5 minutes.
Ooh.
So this looks like finding a pocket to pull my 10-year-old aside and like just talk about his day, or go jump on the trampoline with my 7-year-old for 15 minutes, or instead of going to bed or instead of like, I just feel like going and take a bath and being alone, like I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes with my husband and really check on him and see how his meetings went. It's that intentionality of connection. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be big, but it makes such a vital difference in my people knowing they are loved, they matter, they're safe, and they're seen by me.
That one I absolutely love. I haven't heard that one before. And I think, not that we all don't know that, but we don't practice it for sure. So thank you for sharing that, because that's definitely something on the top of my radar right now that I probably do it, but I want to be more intentional about checking with myself and how I actually am doing that.
Right.
So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. For those listening, all of Stefanie's information will be in the show notes, where you can find her. Although she's not on social media, she does have a small presence, I think, run by more of her team. But her podcast, of course, will be in the show notes. And her Clarity course, I will drop that in there, the little free webinar you can watch. And then again, if you have any other questions on maybe who you want to be when you grow up, I would definitely point you towards Stefanie. And honestly, just listening to her podcast on a daily basis just help pour some positivity into each of us. So thank you for doing what you do. I love it.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, Steph reminded us that finding clarity in our purpose is the key to building a thriving life, business, and/or ministry. There's no one path for everyone, so it definitely is important to stay curious and explore what lights you up. And so today, I wanted to leave you with a thought. If you do feel stuck or unsure what's coming next in this new chapter, start asking yourself, what lights you up? And it might be different than what used to light you up before you had kids. So have fun with it, be flexible, let your mind wander and see what comes up, and then start to get a little bit curious. We also talked about the power of self-care and how creating those non-negotiables really do help us show up as our best self. I hope this conversation has inspired you to dive a little bit deeper on your journey of purpose and well-being. That episode had so many great takeaways. I hope you feel inspired and more empowered to make small 1% shifts on your wellness journey this week. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. If you want to leave a review, share your thoughts, and let me know how you're going to be implementing these 1% shifts into your life. And don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with another mama who could use a little wellness love. Want to stay connected? Join me on Instagram and Facebook at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Check out my website at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com for more resources, and grab yourself some freebies while you're there. Until next time, I hope you find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to come your way. See y'all next week. Love to y'all.